Good morning, everybody. Shane Class here with Shane Talks Politics. It is Christmas Eve, and we've got an exciting show for you today. We're going to give you a little something to talk about around the dinner table this weekend. I've got Carlos Zapata, who is coming on the show with us today. How are you doing, Carlos?
Doing great. How are you doing? Sorry, as I
Doing.
grab my water here.
No, you're going to need it. So, yeah, feel free.
Good morning.
Oh, Carlos, I've talked about you a little bit on the show. I have shown a couple video clips of you in front of the city council, I believe that was, and another one where you guys were having a conversation with other business owners and offering support from the militia. And so our viewers are somewhat familiar with who you are, what you're doing over there, but go ahead and talk about yourself a little bit. And you've got a business over there. Who are you? What do you do?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thanks for having me on. My name is Carlos Zapata, as you mentioned, and I'm a business owner. I own a restaurant and bar, the Palomino Room in Red Bluff, California, which is actually in Tehama County. I live in Shasta County, so a lot of the stuff that you'll see, in fact, when I was speaking in that video, I was speaking to the Shasta County Board of Supervisors, but which is where I live, but my business is down Tehama County. But we sort of go together because Shasta County, being the more populated, larger county, kind of paves the way for the rest of the smaller counties around it. So that's why you'll see my name pop up, in both arenas, if you will.
Now you've got is it just a bar or is it a bar and not just a bar? I mean, it's obviously a lot to run, but is it a
Yeah, no,
bar
it's a
or
bar
is
and
it a bar
restaurant.
and restaurant? And
Yeah,
restaurant? What kind
it's
of
a
food do
bar.
you
It's a
serve? Do I
bar and
want to travel
restaurant.
over?
Yeah, you might want to. We have really, really good food. It's American fine cuisine, and then we have two menus. We do have our dinner time menu, which is really, really good, and then you go to our late night menu, which is your bar food, your fried chicken strips, onion rings, those kinds of things, which are always good about 1 in the morning, you know.
Absolutely. Well, you gonna make me wear a mask?
But it's a historic bar. It's been there since 1947, and they didn't wear masks back then, and we don't wear masks now. So
So you have, from the very beginning of this, give us a little bit of a history over there. We know what's going on over here in Idaho. I wanted to bring you on because, mainly this show, we talk about what's going on in Idaho. But as we're starting to
sure.
see what happens in the neighboring states, does affect the perception of city councils and mayors, and what they see happen over there emboldens them. And we got a mayor gone rogue over, or mayor gone rogue over here in Boise, and we've got a governor that's just gone off the damn rails this whole time. But kind of give us
Sure.
a history of what's happened over there in California from the beginning of this whole pandemic to today.
Yeah. Yeah. So when this all started back in March, I believe it was like March 18th to be exact, is when the lockdowns were instituted by our governor, who's an absolute tyrant, as you all know. And at that point, there was a lot of unanswered questions. We didn't have a lot of answers as to what was going on. So, like any good citizens would do, we sort of scaled back, we shut down, we stayed home because we simply didn't know. I think when we were kids, we all watched, what was that Dustin Hoffman movie? Is it Outbreak?
Outbreak, yeah.
And so we thought that's what was happening, right? We had no idea if, we'd go outside and see our neighbors lying in the streets. So after that 2 weeks was over, we started to sort of, speculate that there was a bigger plan going on. There was something else that was happening. And as these lockdowns were extended, as the regulations got more stringent and more strict, we started to fight back. We started to resist because what we realized, and we're talking about probably 3 weeks, a month and a half in, we realized that people just aren't getting sick the way they're telling us they should be. And, as businesses were closed and now had a bill cycle, that had caught up with them and that they couldn't pay, that's when people started to show some signs of desperation. And I'm not going to say that all business owners stood with me, because there were some that were fine with taking government money and being able to survive that way. But I will say that fast forward to now, there are, I'd say, about 95% of business owners who are ready to stand with us and fight, because that money ran out, and we never took any of that initial government money at all. So we were just sort of trying to make it day by day, which is the reason that I stayed open. We opened my bar, my restaurant on May 1st. And it was a big deal. We had thousands of people show up from all over the place, including from your state in Idaho, just to support what we were doing on that day, because that was we called it a constitutional grand opening, and it was pretty cool. It was pretty cool to see a bunch of patriots come together and people want to support businesses. Unfortunately, we were met with resistance from law enforcement. Our local PD came and they gave me a citation, and then I had
What'd they cite you for?
From ABC. They cited me for disobeying a mandate, or disobeying a governor's order. An executive order. That's what it was. It's disobeying an executive order.
Oh,
and which didn't end up going anywhere. It really didn't go anywhere. I ended up, talking to the district attorney about it, and we worked a deal out, where it basically got thrown out. But nevertheless, it put me on the wrong side of the law for that initial time. And then we got a visit from ABC, which is our liquor agency here in California. It's Alcoholic Beverage Control Agency. And they wanted to pull my liquor license. They wanted, to threaten me. They wanted to basically, give me at least a suspension and a fine. And they came in, and they told me that I couldn't be open any longer, and that if in the next 3 years I ended up doing the same thing or breaking the same rule, that they would pull my license altogether. So I said, okay, fine. I signed their deal. And then the next day I woke up and said, man, I felt really bad about signing that and about agreeing to that. So I went back into defiance and continued to stay open and being even more vocal and more boisterous about, what we're doing. And I've never hidden who I am. I've never hidden what I'm doing. I'm not trying to be the head of a movement here. I'm simply trying to run a business and be an example for other business owners and other Americans to follow.
Well, it's we've seen this entire last year, when good men rise up and they stand for their rights, they stand for their liberty. They just say, we're not going to do this shit. You kind of become a natural leader, whether you want it or not. And that's just
It was never my intention to gain any kind of publicity. If anybody knows me, I live a very private life, and I sort of enjoy that. I live in a really small town in a very rural part of Northern California. And I do that because I enjoy the way of life up here, where people mind their own business. And what I've seen through this pandemic, if you want to call it that, I've seen people turn on each other, even in this small community. I've seen people rat each other out, snitching on each other. I've seen people, yell at each other and scream at each other for not wearing masks. And it's really, I think, part of a much larger plan, right? It's part of a much larger movement from the national and even globalist level, where they want this. They want to divide us. They want every one of us to be divided, to stay home, to not talk to each other, to not communicate, because they know that in our communication, which leads to community, there is power, and they don't want us rising up against this globalist movement, which I believe is fueled by the Chinese Communist Party.
Yep. Yep. How big is your community right there? How many? What's the population?
Yeah, so I live in a town of 2,000 people.
Oh,
which
boy.
Is next. Yeah, which is next to a town of 100,000 people, which is which is surrounded by other small towns. But my business is in Red Bluff, California, which has about 15,000 people in Red Bluff.
Okay, so you're probably in numbers. We're about 50,000 people here in Twin Falls, but I think the Magic Valley area has a couple 100,000 people within.
I imagine it's pretty similar to that area.
Yeah. So, I don't know the whole story, and and neither do everybody out here listening. When you had the meeting, and we'll get into that meeting here in a minute with the militia encouraging businesses to open and militia in those areas to support them. I believe I recall hearing something about being contacted by the FBI. Was that you
Yeah,
or one of
so
the other gentlemen?
yeah, it was. So let me back up a little bit. Let me
Okay.
tell this story. So
Yeah, give us the full context.
back in sure. So back in August, uh, one of our community leaders here, Alyssa McEwen, who's been a great leader. You can look her up on Facebook, on social media. She's sort of taken on the role of organizer in this whole movement to resist against all this tyranny. And she put together a protest rally outside of the Board of Supervisors chambers. And it was a Tuesday in early August. I can't remember the exact date. And so we all went out there. We all went in force. We had a great group out there in Redding, California, which is a county seat for Shasta County. And our whole goal was to flood that Board of Supervisors meetings with patriots, with people who were willing to speak inside the chambers and give them a piece of our minds and tell them that we thought that they should open up the county ahead of the governor's regulations. So our whole idea, our whole goal was don't wait for the governor to tell us we can open. Let's take control of our own county, of our own towns, and let's open for business. So there we were. Gosh, there was a line, of, I could have put a number to it, but it was going to be a good hour to hour and a half, maybe even 2 hours to get in there to speak. And I never planned to speak. I planned to be there in support of my friends and my family who was there. And Alyssa grabbed me and said, "Carlos, you have to speak at this." And I said, "Well, I have to go." I had plans that evening back at home. And she grabbed me and she opened the door and almost literally threw me in and said, "You're going ahead of mine."
Oh yeah, I got to meet this gal.
Oh, she's incredible. So there I was standing. I get thrown in the door, and I'm standing there in front of this chamber, and the rest is history. Excuse me. So you can watch that speech, and that was sort of the shot that was heard around the world at that point.
It was. We played it here on the show. Everybody here's watched it.
Yeah. So, almost instantly, within a couple of days, they had gone nationwide and even worldwide. I think there was people in Ireland, Australia, Canada, who had seen this deal, who were responding back to me. And I never even wanted that. When my sister first posted that, I said, "Hey, take that shit down. I don't need this going viral. I don't want that kind of publicity." But I soon realized that it was important for that to go viral at that moment. It was important for people to hear that, because it made them feel like they weren't alone. It made them know that there was other people like them. And I feel like it was really the spark that set the flame for a movement that would eventually take back our country. And I think that was a pretty cool deal. And I'm not saying that it was only me. I believe that at that moment there was some sort of divine intervention, not just on my behalf, but on the behalf of all the other patriots that were there with me that day. And Shasta County since then has sort of become a nucleus for this kind of movement, for this kind of liberty, take back our country type of movement. So with that sort of propelled me into this leadership position, if you will, where people started to look to me for answers. And I think there's those people
they're looking
out there
to you for courage. They
sure, and I think there's people who were hoping I'd be that William Wallace, Braveheart, ready to storm into battle with them, which I very much would be willing to do. But I knew that there was other things that we had to do before we got to that point. And I'm not going to say that we are or are not there yet. We can talk about that later in the hour, where we think we are. But at that point, I don't think we were there yet. I think we still had to exhaust some of the legal avenues. We still had to continue to give our voice, but I did feel that we were coming close to a boiling point. So I became very vocal on social media. Immediately my Twitter went from literally 0 followers to 14,000 followers in 2 days. Wow. So all of a sudden I had a platform and I had a voice, and so I was very, very vocal. I never hide who I am. I feel like I'm many things, but a coward I am not. And if I'm going to do anything, I'm going to do it 100% and try to influence as many people positively as I can. So in doing that, obviously you sort of skyline yourself and you put yourself out there for your words to get interpreted or
Yeah.
misinterpreted, by people, which obviously falls in the lap of eventually law enforcement. And that's what happened. So I did get a visit from the FBI at my house. And, it kind of, it makes you laugh because, I mean, I think it makes you laugh or it makes you cry. And I'll choose to laugh, to avoid crying about it because it's ridiculous. The society, the country that we live in now, that a man who is simply just trying to run a business and calling other patriots to do so, all of a sudden gets labeled as a domestic terrorist, right? And you sort of get lumped into these groups. You get lumped into the David Koreshes of the world, when you start to speak your mind and people start to follow you. And the government doesn't like people following other people. They want you to follow them. They want you to follow their rules and regulations.
Boy, that's so true.
They really don't like communities to come together. They hate it. This is the exact reason that there was such a push over the last 50 years to move people into the cities, because out here in the country where we live, we can grow our own food, we can hunt for our own food, we can create our own schools, our own communities, our own churches. We're able to speak freely to each other. We're able to live with very little government oversight, and they hate that. So there was always such a movement to move people into the cities where they could count them, control them, and really mark their every move. And so I feel like people where we live, we're all pretty like-minded people. But the problem is that we've been infiltrated up here in rural America by people from the city because they've moved up here, they bought up property, with their city money. And instead of wanting to come up here and adopt and embrace our way of life, they want to change our way of life. They want to bring
isn't
the
that
bullshit
familiar?
from the city out here in rural America. So I'm sure the same thing is happening in Idaho.
Yeah, everybody up here complains that they're coming from down there.
Yeah. So if you know anything about California is actually a very conservative state.
They are.
The problem is that we are rural. It's a very rural state. It's a farming state. It's a ranching state. It's actually a very cowboy state.
But
we are ruled
you produce more, I think, fruits, nuts, vegetables than anybody else in the U.S.
We are still the breadbasket of the world. Yeah, it's still the breadbasket of the world. We still feed the world from California. But the problem is that the population centers in Los Angeles and the San Francisco Bay Area,
right?
They are the ones who are able to rule the roost because of the sheer numbers and the population that they have. So, and here's the deal. We believed that narrative for so long that we are ruled by them. We believe that, oh, well, we just don't have enough people where we're at. And after seeing what's happened in this last election, I venture to say that we've been lied to, and that there are more conservative people voting conservatively than there are liberals and leftists, but we've always bought that narrative that, oh, well, we're outnumbered, and we just sort of accepted it without actually counting votes. So.
Yeah, you probably have a lot of people who stay home because they believe that their vote doesn't count against the big bad counties down below, down south.
Oh, you're absolutely right. You're including, people I know. I mean, I have good friends who say all the time, every election, like, oh, I'm not going to vote. It doesn't even matter. That they call the election before our votes even get counted. And I understand that, but how do we ever really change this? And we are at such an existential crisis right now in our country at every level, at this local level, at the county levels, at the state levels, and at the national level, where we have to make a decision about what we want to be for the next 500 years. And we have an opportunity to change that. I think every generation has faced their own set of obstacles. Every generation's faced their own defining moments. But I believe this is not a defining moment for ourselves and our generation. It's a defining moment for what our country's going to be forever.
Yes,
it's
it is.
Going to live or it's going to die by what we do. And that's how serious I take this. I wasn't this serious about it before. I thought that we could sort of navigate our way through it, using whatever pathway people chose. But now I'm seeing that this has been a complete coercion to get socialism and let's say communism. We won't talk about the differences between socialism and communism. Political science class, which lump them together, I think they lead to the same thing, which is an absolute totalitarian government control of the people. And this has been a play by them, and it's not surprising. If we read history, if we read books about how socialism has taken root in other parts of the world, we can see that this is exactly what's happening now. Play by play, it's what's happening to us right now, and we are absolutely buying into it. And it's bullshit, and it's sad. It's sad to see people that I once respected and that I thought were at once courageous people completely cower, because of a virus that you said it earlier before, we started the show, that has a 99.7, 99.8 survivability rate. So this just doesn't pass the sniff test, to me, for an emergency. Something else for sure.
What was that visit with the FBI like? What grounds did they say they had for coming in and having a chit chat with you?
Yeah. So they, first of all, they went to the wrong house first, and the people that lived in that house,
our tax dollars at work,
coming. So I already knew. So I already knew they were coming, and sure enough, they come up. We have a long driveway, and I see them coming up the driveway. So if there's anything I know about dealing with law enforcement is you don't let them in your house. You never
meet them outside.
Home, because at that point, you got to meet them outside, because at that point, they see that as consent. And once they're in your home, I don't know, to me on a personal level, it just feels way too intrusive, and I don't like government at all. I don't like government anywhere even near my property, let alone inside my home where my kids eat and sleep and are raised. So I met him outside, and I was very calm. I kind of joked that I knew they were coming, and I'm glad they came because I had things to do that day, And they were real nice. They were polite. I think they seemed a little bit nervous, like they didn't even want to be there, but they were there at the, under whatever orders they got from their higher ups, I'm sure. And the question came up. I said, well, if you don't mind me asking, what is it you guys are here for? Like, well, do you mind answering some questions? I said, well, I don't feel comfortable really speaking without a lawyer present, but I'd sure like to know what this is about, They said, well, it's about, some social media posts, and we just want to make sure that you're not saying or doing anything that's going to get you jammed up. I said, well, I've never hidden who I am, you know where I stand. I said, I'm a big Second Amendment guy, and you guys are supposed to be the ones who are upholding the Constitution. And so therefore you should study and understand and know the Constitution well. That Second Amendment, it's not there for gun collectors or hunters. It's there for moments like this where we might have to, defend ourselves, and that's all I'm going to say. And so I sort of stopped. I sort of caught myself, talking, and I said, you know what, that's all I'm going to say. I don't feel comfortable saying much more without a lawyer. And that was that. And then what I did tell him, I said, you should actually be thankful that there's guys like me stopping the real crazy people, because there's people way crazier than, who want to do really, really bad things right now. And I told him, I said, hey, be thankful there's people like me to stop people like that. At which point, begged the question from them, well, who are these people? And can you point us in their direction? And I said, absolutely not. That's your job. That's not my job. I'm not. Mama didn't raise no snitch,
So you've had your liquor license threatened.
And that was that. Nothing else ever came out of that. So
you've had your business threatened. You've been visited by the FBI, and yet, from the sounds of it, nothing's happened. You're still up and operating and running. And have there been any other threats to close your business or fines or anything?
Surprisingly, the biggest threat that we face is not from law enforcement, but from fellow citizens. I've been called more names. I've been put down and bullied more by fellow citizens than I ever could be by law enforcement, and that's a sad thing. And that's what they do.
It is sad.
I mean, that's a real sign of tyranny, is when you're able to turn your fellow citizens against each other, and that's a horrible, horrible thing.
It's right out of the psychological warfare playbook.
this is a complete psyop, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, and I'm living under the constant threat of somebody coming to my home, somebody coming to my business and trying to shut me down, or even arrest me. Um, but I'll tell you that we've been very clear as to where we stand constitutionally, where we stand legally, and very clear about what our rights are. And we are well within our rights. We are good and faithful citizens of this country.
Amen.
And we're not the unlawful, not the ones who are out there breaking laws and breaking rules. We've done everything by the book. We've done everything correctly to get to where we're at, especially in running our businesses. We've paid all of our, our licenses. We've done things the right way. And, that they want to punish us for it. And we're not going to have that. It's impossible. I said this the other night, and you might have played that video, I think, where I said that if my job required me to come and take your job, I would not do my job. Not now, not ever, not in a million years would I ever do that. We don't do that to each other. We don't do that to our fellow Americans. And that's exactly what is happening now, where I feel like our governor is pinning us not only against each other as citizens, but they're pinning us against law enforcement, where people like us have always been the back the blue type of people. But
right.
I made a post about this the other day where eventually, that support's going to erode if they don't support us, and if they don't choose a side and choose to not, enforce these ridiculous tyrannical mandates.
Yeah. So you are now part of the Cottonwood Militia. Were you a member of that before all this started?
I was not. In fact, I would have run the other way if you tried to tell me to join a militia. But as I started to educate myself and I started to meet people that I trusted and meet people that I wanted to align myself with, I realized that all the militia really is the American citizenry. By definition, everybody, including yourself, we're all part of the militia. If you're not in law enforcement and you're not in the military, you are part of the militia, which is the way that our country was established. And our founding fathers were so intelligent, they were so smart and had such foresight in writing this into the Constitution, because they knew that the only way to keep a government over free people is to give those people complete liberty and freedom to rise up against the government, which is why the Second Amendment is the most important part of the Constitution, because without that, we have no teeth and we have no bottom line. I got to meet, Woody Clendenin through all this, and I know he won't mind me using his name. He does not hide who he is either. And he's the man who I've grown to respect tremendously and who's become a friend of mine through this whole process, and I'll tell you, under Woody's leadership, this militia has grown and grown into a very substantial, and strong group, which is what we need. And it's a real sample for other communities to do the same thing, and if you meet Woody, you're going to find a man who loves this country more than anything, loves his family, just more than anything, and really wants to do the right thing. He's not a person who is quick to the trigger, but he's certainly not a person to ever back down or take a step backward either. And I respect that. He's very forward moving. And at this point, he and I have teamed up to be the guys, the face of this movement with regard to how we're going to move forward and how we're going to actually fight when the time comes, because we have to draw a line in the sand somewhere. I feel like this is where the conservative movement has failed constantly, is that we draw a line in the sand and they go over that line, then we draw a new line, they go over that line, and we keep drawing new lines. So
it's so crazy how familiar all of this sounds. It's you're not alone down there. This is pretty much the same conversations we're having up here in Idaho.
100%. And the reason it's so similar, here's Bill Shane. The reason it's so similar to what you're experiencing in Idaho, what they're experiencing in Utah, Oklahoma, Texas, you name it, all the way across the country, is because we have all been played by the same tyrannical globalist movement. They've played us all exactly the same.
And people are people. I mean, we talked about this on this show quite a bit. How you draw, it's like we drew a line in the sand, and that was at the Constitution. That was our founding fathers drew their line. They said this is what the government's allowed to do, not what you're getting, and this is what you're supposed to do. and everything else is ours, and everything else belongs to the states, and stay away. Don't screw with it. And then they took a step forward, and the people,
Absolutely.
instead of standing the line right back then and saying, "Whoa, hold on a minute," they said, "Well, that seems reasonable," and stepped back. "Oh, we're good Christian folks. We're not supposed to get rowdy," and they stuck back. Said, "But don't cross this line."
Yeah.
Okay, we're drawing a new line. Don't cross this one, and then they continue to step back.
Yeah.
And you know what we keep asking up here? When the hell are you going to step forward and say enough? We're not just
Absolutely.
we're not just stopping you anymore. When you push us to the point that we have to push back, we're not just drawing a new line and standing that line. We need to start stepping forward and push the government all the way back to where they started, which was these are the things you're allowed to do and nothing else, and knock it off.
Yeah, and we have to make them scared again.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the fact. If our politicians, I don't even like to call them leaders because I don't feel like they're leading me in anything. They're simply supposed to be keeping the wolves at bay, right? They're supposed to be making sure that our roads, are adequate. They're supposed to be making sure that our schools are adequate for education. They're supposed to create an environment where businesses can thrive and commerce can move forward in a good direction. But they are not my lead. They don't lead me. I don't wake up in the morning and look to them for leadership or for guidance, But our politicians need to be held to a standard, knowing that we are the bottom line and that we will remove them forcibly if we need to. Shall they step outside of what is constitutionally correct and acceptable?
Yes. Yes.
That's really the bottom line. And I'll tell you this: everybody throughout American history has always said the same thing. If you don't like what's going on, you have to vote differently next time, right? That's always been the course of action that we take as Americans in a constitutional republic is we vote.
Mm-hmm.
And we're at a point now where that has been taken away from us. Even our right to vote with integrity has been taken away. So what do we have left at this point? If I would have told you 5, 10, 15, 30 years ago that there would come a time where your vote wouldn't count because the system was so corrupt and your politicians were taking advantage of the citizens and shutting down businesses throughout the country, you would have said, well, if that ever happened, we just kill them all. We would fight. That's what you would have said.
That's what we would have said. Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. We said, no way in hell they're going to do that. Bullshit. No, you're tinfoil cap.
Absolutely. Yet here we are. We're sitting right in the midst of this giant pile of shit, wondering how we got here. I'll tell you how we got here. We got here because we didn't fight to begin with.
Complacency and apathy.
100%, because we were never that uncomfortable, right? It always affected somebody else. It was like, yeah, I don't agree with that, but it doesn't really affect me, so I'm just going to sit here, and kind of watch things unfold, and hopefully it'll change and get better for everybody. But now we're at a point where we're so negatively affected across the board. It's affecting me personally. It's affecting people I know. It's affecting my children now and the way that they're being raised, because they're not in school and they're not able to see their friends like they used to and doing things that normal kids should be able to do.
How's their grades doing with all this?
I can't even go out to dinner with my wife. We can't even go on a date without having to drive all over town looking for a place that's open. And it's pretty ridiculous where we've gotten. But we now have to go to that next level and move toward a not so much of a ideological fight or a philosophical fight, but we have to start moving in the direction of what a real kinetic fight might look like. And this is the kind of language and the kind of thing that gets me visited by the FBI and other agencies and law enforcement. Sort of skylines me, but they need to know that, look, I'm not a robot. I'm not a brainless or soulless person as much as the government would want me to be. I am a very smart, thinking, loving, emotional human being. And people as such have a right to defend themselves and to protect what they have, what we've worked so hard for. So that's where I'm at now. And I want them to know, and hopefully that stops him. Hopefully I'm able to stop them with my words before we get into a real kinetic fight. And they can storm in my house at 6 a.m. with blue jackets on, I don't give a shit, you know,
Mm.
because I will know that I am on the right side of history. I will know that the people around me are on the right side of history. At that point, they will spark something that they won't be able to undo. They'll start a fire that they can't put out. And that's not what we want. Trust me, that some of my best friends in the world are in law enforcement, and they feel very much like we feel, you know. They
That's
understand that
promising.
there's a job. Yeah, they understand that there's a job to do, but they also understand that before that job comes the faithful sworn oath to the Constitution, to the idea of a free America. That's way more important than any orders you get from your boss, you know. So I've told so Woody and I, as we've been talking throughout this whole process, we agreed, and it's not just me and Woody, that there's a lot of other people I don't want to name because I don't know if they feel comfortable with me giving their names out. But Terry Raposa is a great ally as well. He's a radio host and has his own radio program, so his name's out there anyway. And he was with us on that panel that you saw the other night. And he's a very smart constitutional, student, if you will. He is a student of the Constitution. He's a guy who can tell you, what paragraph, what line you can find all these things in. So we need people like that. But Shane, we are at a point now where, like I was saying, we've come to the decision that if any business owner decides to stay open and gets visited by any agency of any level, that we will be there to support them. We will be there, with not just militia members, but good patriotic Americans that are ready to fight, and we will stop them because we have more power than they have. We cannot entirely give them the power that they think they deserve, or the power that they think they have because they work for the governor. We don't work for the governor, so all that power is irrelevant to us. So that's where we're at
their
now.
power is right here. They get in everybody else's heads and make them think that they have the right to do this. And as long as people think that have that misconception between their ears, then they get away with it. They do have the power, but it's not because it's written in the Constitution. It's not because we the people gave them that power legally. They just think they have it, and they've got us buffooned and buffaloed into believing it.
You're absolutely right. Our power and our rights come from God. They don't come from a government.
That's right.
And their power, the government's power, is derived from the people. They only have the power that we give them. If we give them no power, then they don't have it. If we lay down every time they say lay down, or every time they say jump, we say how high, then that starts to set a precedent for what they can and cannot do to us. And for so long, we've been scared of we all grew up, you need to respect, what the government says. You need to respect law enforcement, respect cops. And I understand the sentiment. I want to respect cops. I want my children to grow up knowing to respect, law enforcement.
Yeah, they're fellow human beings, they're fellow citizens, and they deserve respect until they don't.
Absolutely. But I also don't want them to grow up thinking that anybody has power over them. I want my sons to know that no man has power over them. And,
right.
and that's very, very important. I want all my kids, not just my sons, my nephew, to know that, they are free people and they have rights that are sacred and beautiful. And that's what makes America America. Without that, then we're just another third world country. And that's where, I really feel like we're living in a third world country now. I feel like to get anybody's attention, you have to go burn a city,
It blows my mind that they have the balls to do this. And that's shame on us. They should be terrified to even contemplate, to consider. Yeah. If anybody in a backroom meeting says, you know what, I think we ought to shut businesses down, everybody else in that room should be standing up and saying, do you need a straitjacket? What the hell's wrong with you? No, we're not going to do that. You know what would happen if we do that? The people would come in, there'd be a huge revolt. No. And instead, they say, yeah, we're going to shut you down. And everybody goes, oh, I guess we're shut down. It's disgusting.
I guess
and it's our fault.
Yep. It really is. So to say this, Red Bluff City Council has their meetings had an emergency meeting on Monday night, this last Monday, just a couple of days ago, and I called in. Now, every business owner was urged and encouraged to call in because the city council was about to vote on this letter they wanted to send this letter out to every business to tell them or encourage them to comply with the governor's orders, and how many business owners do you think called in that day? This guy. I was the only one
Are
of
you
every other
kidding me?
business. Red Bluff. I was the only one that actually listened and called in to give him a piece of my mind. And during that meeting, some things took place that just absolutely were astonishing. It appalled me that they told me what one of the city council women said. She said, you might get more customers in your business if you enforce the mask mandate. I was like, are you crazy? Have you seen my business? We are slammed, and people come to our business, come there because they feel free and it feels normal again. And I said, you know what? If somebody thinks that, if somebody thought that would give them more, a bigger customer base, more customers, more money, so be it. I'm all for them making that choice. If you want to enforce a mask mandate in your restaurant or your bar, go ahead. I'm not going to do it. And you can't force us all to do it, unilaterally across the board. It just doesn't work for me. And then another, city councilman, says, you're right. There's things that we can do to isolate ourselves from the state government, but we need to start contact tracing here locally then. And if your business is found, to be a spreader of this virus, then we will shut you down forcibly. We will get the DA involved, we'll get the courts involved, and we will shut you down. I said, well, shoot, this almost sounds worse than what the state's trying to do to us, So, but these are the kinds of politicians that we have, the kinds of people that we have representing us, unfortunately, is people who have this mentality that we need to manage behavior. I do not need the government to manage my behavior. I don't need the government to manage my children's behavior. That's my job as a parent. We are grown people, grown, smart, capable, successful people. My behavior does not need to be managed by a city council or any government. So
I don't know if you saw it or not, but that is the language that our governor over here was using. We just need to get people to comply. He actually said those words. We just need to get people to comply. And then he came out and said that that I have been the biggest proponent of changing behavior. And we all just kind of sat there and went, "What?
yeah,
Is this Idaho? What?" You're actually they're so bold now. They're not just
no,
shifting around it. They'll say the words. We just want you to comply. We want to manage behavior.
and that's absolute insanity. I'm not sure if our internet is cutting out on us here. Are you able to hear me and see the picture?
Yeah, we can see you. Your mouth doesn't match your voice all the time. I think you're just a little bit laggy on the internet, but we can hear you just fine.
Yeah. You know what? Maybe can you guys turn off all the Wi-Fi on your phones? Sometimes if everybody else in the house turns off their Wi-Fi, we get a little bit better
Rural living.
signal. Oh man, yeah, country living, I guess. That's what you pay for, But
Has there
things have
been
gotten
any
so serious because for
lashbacks?
so long,
There's a little lag, so we're talking.
lashbacks.
Yeah, accidentally talking over each other. There's just that little bit of a lag. Has there been any pushback since you came out and with the militia and said, "Hey, business is open. We're going to protect you"? What kind of response have you gotten from the community, and what kind of response have you gotten from the government?
We've gotten such a great response, but you got to realize that the response that we get privately in private messages, in private phone calls and emails is different from the response that you see publicly,
Sure it
and
is.
this is why politicians and leftists always think they're winning, because they don't see what we are doing behind the scenes. They don't hear the private conversations. They don't see what happens when we're meeting and we're not in the spotlight. In fact, I've been accused at times of not doing enough. I've been accused of just being a talker. Oh, that Carlos Zapata guy, he went and gave that speech and he hasn't really done anything about it. Well, let me tell you, you don't want to know the things I've been doing. They don't want to know, what I've been doing behind the scenes or how I've been preparing for times like this. So they can say what they want, but I'm obviously a smart person and I'm not going to put everything that I do and say out there for them to attack. So.
Yeah. Now you are. I have to do my due diligence when I do this show, so I've been Facebook stalking you just a little bit. Um, and it looks like you are ex-Marine. Is that correct? Not ex-Marine. Yeah, you're never an ex-Marine. You're still a Marine,
Or Marine.
but
Yeah, you're never next Marine.
yeah, you are a
Yes.
Marine, and it looks like you Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Yeah, I do. I'm a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt as well, and I've been doing Jiu-Jitsu now for 23 years. And I was one of the first guys, here to start doing that, a very, very long time ago. And that's what I did for a living for a lot of years was I ran a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu academy, which I
Oh, no
sold a
kidding.
couple of years ago to go into, yeah.
Is
But I still train. I mean, I still 2, 3 days a week. So.
I was going to ask, is your the militia group taking advantage of some of that past experience?
You know what? You'd be surprised. There's a lot of guys in the militia group that train in martial arts. Woody's actually a martial artist himself and a black belt in karate. So, but no, we don't have a lot of militia guys coming to train with us in jiu-jitsu. I think a lot of those guys train a lot more in weapons and those kinds of tactics
Mm-hmm.
than they do in martial arts.
We've given a lot of thought to this just on what we should be doing to get ready in our personal life, and I think that with more and more I don't know if you're out there. We're out there at quite a few protests and stuff like that, and I thought, I'm out here. I don't necessarily want to have to pull my gun on somebody if someone starts something, and it wouldn't hurt to know how to defend yourself physically for a lot of folks that are out there doing this, because it is getting a little bit crazier and a little bit wilder on that side. But the more and more and more our government just keeps up doing what they're doing, the more unrest that there is, and the more polarized that it gets. And I see riots breaking out within a couple weeks when that January
I
6th
think so
rolls
too. I think
around.
January 6th, that's going to be a big day for us, and I hope that every patriot that can gets to Washington D.C. I myself do not know if I'm going to make it out there because I think that there's people that also need to stay home and protect
Oh
their
yeah.
communities should any unrest break out here locally. So we can't all leave. We can't all leave the women and children at home. We have to be here to protect what we have here as well. So.
Yep. So we got probably about 12, 13 minutes. Is there anything that you think that you'd like to say to your fellow Americans, fellow citizens out there, that in a message that you want to get out?
Yeah. So listen, we have to fight. We have to fight however we can. There's sometimes we get in the militia men who are in their late 60s, 70s, even 80 years old, who say, hey, look, I want to fight. I want to be a part of this, but I am no longer physically able, to run, jump, and shoot like I maybe once could have. We say the military is made up of very, very many elements. Not everybody's a shooter. Not everybody is that tip of the spear in the infantry. We're going to need somebody to stock food. We're going to need somebody to cook. We're going to need somebody to clean. We're going to need people, to raise animals. And there's so many things that we're going to need people to do in this fight should it go into a kinetic fight. So I would encourage every American, every patriot to do their part. Remember what happened during World War II, the people that went into the factories and rebuilt this country, after the Depression. They were all part of that war effort and that eventual American victory. And at this point, we are not fighting an enemy like we fought before. We're fighting the enemy that's within us. We're fighting an ideology. We're fighting something that once it takes root here in our country, we will never, ever, ever be able to unroot it, unless there is extreme violence. So we are trying to avoid that by stopping it now before it really takes root, and I think we're already almost past that point. But we can't just stand by any longer and hope that things get better. So I would just implore every single American at this point to just be ready to fight however you can. Align yourself, associate yourself with groups that are like-minded. Look up your local militia, get to know them, get to know who their leaders are, and get some answers from them as to what they expect from you should shit hit the fan, because I feel like it's gonna hit the fan. Aside from that, I would also say don't lose your sense of humanity and don't lose your sense of normalcy. Create as normal of an environment as you can for your children at home. Isolate and insulate them from this madness. It is our job as parents, as adults, to save our children from the anxiety and the stress that they may be already feeling due to all this chaos. So maintain a sense of normalcy at home. Sit down at the dinner table together, talk about things that don't have to do with politics. Watch movies with them. Go on walks with them. Do things to let them know that life will still be normal for them. And externally, apart from our children, then we can be the monsters that we need to be in order to do what we need to do, to succeed. But to me, I've always, in my culture, I've always thought that children are the most sacred part of who we are, so we have to protect them first, which is the reason if I didn't have kids, I know that I would be fighting this hard, but I said this the other day where I would rather my grandchildren put flowers on my grave than one day look at me and ask me, hey, Grandpa, how come you let them do this to us? Why'd you let them, take our country? Why didn't you fight? I mean, that would be the end of my life at that point if I ever had my children or grandchildren ask me why I didn't fight. So we all have to look in the mirror at the end of the night. We all have to, at the end of the day, look in the mirror and see if we like what we see or not. If we don't like what we see, we need to change that. If we like what we see, we need to be even better the next day and be even a better version of that. So every American just has to do their part. We have to fight at every single level. We have to hold our politicians accountable, let them know that we're here. Email them, call them, be a pain in their ass, be a burr in their side every single day you wake up, and let them know that they work for us. They don't work for the next higher level of government. The city council does not work for the county does not work for the state does not work for the federal government, and so on and so forth. So, and we certainly don't work for any of them. So let's remember that. Let's remember what it means to be Americans. Take time, just as you might, teach your kids about, different stories in history or teach them about the Bible. I would say, hey, you know what? Take the time to teach them what the Constitution is. Have them study the Constitution and have them find that that identity as patriotic Americans through that Constitution. Have them develop a sense of pride and have them develop a sense of spirit, because of what that document teaches them. I think that's a very important thing to teach them at a very young age.
Folks, we did not rehearse these questions. You can tell that Carlos speaks from the heart because he didn't need to rehearse that. That came just straight from where he. That's what I love about this, being able to just kind of throw some random questions at you like that, and let people talk, because you get to find out who they are. And I can tell you're a great patriot. You're a great value to your community. And I know you're a great father just from the little bit of time that I've spent with you here on this show.
I appreciate that, and I appreciate you having me on here, and I'd like to be on again, as things change, as things progress. I think we're going to have to use these outlets, and I thank you for what you're doing. So many good patriots like yourself are taking the time, not for fame, not for glory, not for any kind of credit, but you're taking the time to develop these sorts of shows and podcasts to give us an outlet to get our news out, to get our voices heard, because we don't get our voices heard through the mainstream media outlets. We don't get our voices heard, in this crazy society that we live in now. We get, even social media, right? I get banned on Facebook. I get banned on Twitter. We get shadow banned anytime that we start to speak freely about what we believe. So these shows like you're doing are so important. And I thank you for doing that. It's a very patriotic and noble thing that you're doing. So I appreciate it.
I want to read you some of the comments that come in. I have a chat client here that takes from all sources and brings them all together. And I've been kind of watching these. I didn't want to interrupt as we were going along because this has just been a good conversation. But we've had some folks that popped in and said that after watching you get up in your boldness that have sought out and joined a militia group. We have another one that said, when you were just talking about there's room for everybody, you need people to cook, need people to clean, those types of things. One of them popped in and said, so happy to hear this. I was wondering if my situation would still make me able to have a place in militia. We've got folks popping in saying Idaho will hold the line with you in California. There are many, many, many great comments that are coming up, and you are making a difference all the way out here, and you're making a difference around the world. And I know that you didn't intend to be a leader. That wasn't you want your quiet lifestyle, but I'm sorry to tell you, I think your life is going to be changed for a while. That quiet lifestyle, I don't think you're going to have much.
Well, no, and I understand that, and I've gotten to appreciate that now at this point. My kids laugh at me. They call me Kim Kardashian, because everywhere we go, I am, and they sort of tease me that way. But no, but listen, I never intended to do this, which I think makes me that much more effective, because everything I've said comes from the heart.
Yep.
And Terry Raposa said something that made sense to me. He said, Carlos Zapata is effective because he's every man, he's every father.
Oh yeah.
So, and again,
there's a lot of truth in that.
And I think that when people see a normal person saying the things that I'm saying, and it resonates with them, it gives them power and it gives them value and worth to be able to move forward with us and to be part of this.
Exactly why more and more people need to start rising up and finding their voice, because we've heard from those who rehearse their lines. We've heard from those who have been groomed, those who have studied, those whose aspirations in life are power. And I think what we're finding is that I would much rather fall in line behind a Carlos Zapata than I would a Governor Chicken Little. And that is because those who want power, we should fear.
Absolutely, and I think that's what's unique to our movement here, to this movement with the Alyssas and the Carloses and the Woodies and the Terrys, and the Jessies and the people in this community who are part of this, who want to make sure that we are a stronghold for the values that we hold dear. What makes us special is that none of us are the kinds of people that want the limelight. None of us are the kinds of people that want the fame or the glory. We simply want what we want, and we know how to get it. And the way that we get it is by being courageous and willing to fight. And we have such a cool group here. Such an able-bodied, able-minded group of patriots that I'm proud to be a part of. So,
well, I watched your guys's your speech that you gave when you had your militia together. Just not really necessarily speeches; they were just talks that you were having, the conversation. And people looked at me and said, "Man, Shane, you're so bold. You speak out." And then I sat and watched you guys, and I went, "Shit, man, I'm a chicken." And then I said, "It's time for me to rise up a little bit stronger." And I kind of danced around some words a little bit about folks that are wearing a mask out there and that are going to work and just following along with what everybody said. And I think the people here that follow me saw me come out and said, I'm not. People thought that I wasn't holding back before. They're about to hear a lot of what I am holding back, and I came on the show and I said, you know what? If you're wearing that mask on your face because you or somebody told you to, not because you believe you need to wear it, then you're a coward. And I think we need to use that word coward a little bit more and stop. The time for PC is over.
It's over.
It's time to start calling the kettle black and calling a chicken shit and a coward, and because it's not doing anybody any favors. Sometimes we need to be, we've tried to baby people into realizing that they need to wake up, and we don't have time for that anymore. It's time to hit them over the head with it and say, hey, let's just this is what you are. Look in the mirror. Absolutely. And if you're not ready to rise up and fight with your fellow citizen, then get the hell out of the way. You're dead weight. Because we have got to start fighting, and people need to stand up. I know that this is Christmas Eve, and this may be not the Christmas gift that everybody wants, but this is where we're at. And you're getting ready to meet with your families, your loved ones. You're gonna have dinner tomorrow. You're going to celebrate the birth of Christ. But while you're doing that, it's a good opportunity to have some conversations around the table. And we kind of jokingly talked about this before, but I don't think it's a joke. I think that you need to start having some table talks this weekend with your family, however uncomfortable, and take a look at each other as you're enjoying your Christmas holiday, and imagine what it's going to be like next year if it's not here, or the year after that, when the government's telling you whether or not you can celebrate Christmas. They're already trying, and
Absolutely. So
you need to have some serious talks.
in 1914, during World War One, the Germans and the British, they never had a formal ceasefire, but on the battlefield, as they were in their trenches shooting at each other, they sort of agreed at the same time by singing carols together and having that Christmas spirit for that small short period of time. They agreed that they would not shoot each other. And they took that time to even exchange gifts. They took that time to come out of their trenches, recover some of the dead bodies that had been killed that the other side had. They took that time to even, some of them, enjoy a friendly game of soccer, during that time. It was a truce for a moment.
That is true. I've read that story a few times, and it's very touching, isn't it?
So it is very touching. So I would ask that during this next couple of days, as we celebrate Christmas Eve and Christmas, going into the new year, that we call a sort of truce, not because we're unwilling to fight, but because we are regenerating ourselves, we're renewing ourselves,
Yeah.
we are giving our family a sense of normalcy, and we're appreciating and loving our families for a bit. But you can bet your ass that when this small period, the small lull in our fires is over, that we are going to come down. We're going to come at you heavier and hotter than ever, because we will be even more ready to fight, because we will have experienced what it's like to have a sense of normalcy again. We'll have tasted that love from our families, and that's going to empower us to fight even harder. So, just remember that.
That's good speaking. I don't think there's anything else left to say after that, Carlos. Appreciate you coming on here. I appreciate your spirit. I appreciate your honesty, your truthfulness, your transparency, and just everything that you're doing over there in California. I know I speak for every single one of us that are on the show here. I've gotten to know a lot of these people, and we appreciate anybody who is willing to put themselves out there. And you put yourself in harm's way. They can come in and try to take your business. There's a lot of ugly things that they can try to do to you, and you're bold and you're willing to do that because you have conviction. And it's time for Americans to have conviction again. But yeah, absolutely, you can come on the show again anytime you've got something. You've got I'd like to get to know you better off the show. I just think Absolutely. You're a good human being.
I'd love to have a beer. I'd love to have a beer or three with you. We'd have some great talks, and we'd probably get a lot of things done.
I think we probably would too. And we'll talk. We'll figure that out. It might start with a beer or a whiskey over Zoom, but we'll do it. And tell your fellow men over there in the militia, if they have anything that they want to come on and talk. This platform, I've told my listeners, my viewers, I didn't start this for everybody to listen to me stand up here and yap. This is to give everybody else a voice. And if there's there's important things that need to be said, come on.
Where can you find this? Is it going to be on Facebook?
Yeah, so this
is posted on Facebook.
Yeah, so you can find it on Facebook on Shane Talks Politics. All you got to do is just facebook.com/Shane Talks Politics. Down at the bottom here, it says the www.shanetalkspolitics.com. As soon as the show is over with, I will be posting it up there. They can find Shane Talks Politics on YouTube, and they can find Shane Talks Politics over on Twitter. It's @TalksShane is how that comes up on Twitter for those folks. But if they're not on one of those platforms, they're welcome to go over to my page. And if for some reason you have folks that can't find it, let me know, and we'll figure out how to send them a link over to something. But you have a Merry Christmas, sir. And I wish you and God bless you. I wish you and your family the best. And get rested and get rejuvenated, because we have a lot coming.
Oh. Awesome. Merry Christmas, guys. Thank you.
Yeah, Merry Christmas. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Have a very, very Merry Christmas. And I'm taking the weekend off, so This is the you know I'm going to say this is the last you'll hear from me over the weekend, but you know I can't stay away. I'll probably have something to pop on and pop off with, but I'm going to focus on my family and focus on the weekend this weekend, and do the same thing. Get ready for the fight next week. Thanks for coming. We'll talk.